Good morning again. My name is Liz Stallard, and I am very pleased to welcome you to today's presentation, our virtual tour of the Sacramento Zoo, sponsored by Downey Brand. I can tell you I'm very excited because this brings together the two organizations that are nearest and dearest to my heart. Downey Brand, of course, where I'm a partner in our labor and employment practice, and the Sacramento Zoo, where I am very proud to serve currently as the president of the Board of Trustees. I was also fairly excited to learn, as I was getting ready to talk to you this morning, some interesting trivia about Downey Brand and the Sacramento Zoo. Downey Brand was first founded in 1926, which makes it 1 year older than our Sacramento Zoo, founded in 1927. Downey Brand is also the largest firm in the Sacramento region. The Sacramento Zoo is the largest attended attraction in the Sacramento region, so we have a lot in common there as well. And today we're going to go on a virtual tour from the comfort of your own homes or offices or wherever you may be today. But before we start learning about the incredible animals at the Sacramento Zoo and also the staff who take such wonderful care of them, I want to go over a few ground rules for today's Zoom presentation. So first of all, if you have any questions about the animals or what happens at the zoo, you can use the Q&A feature, which you should see at the bottom of your Zoom screen in the help bar. Those questions, I will do my best to answer them when we're visiting the animal you asked the question about, but if we don't get to them, don't worry, we'll make sure that we connect with you by the end of the hour and get that answer to you, okay? Second, the chat feature is also going to be live. I see some folks using it already. Feel free to use it for general comments or questions. Feel free to use it to reach out to either me or to Mary Isley, our head of marketing, who's assisting me in making everything work today. If you need any particular assistance, if you have any urgent legal needs, feel free to reach out. We can always take care of that as well. In any event, the chat feature is there too. The third thing I want to let you know is that this is not just a show, that you have to actively participate. We're going to do that in a few ways. One is we're going to have polls for you to answer throughout the hour, and we hope that you'll participate in those. And then also at the end of our hour, we're going to be giving you an opportunity to win some very cute fuzzy prizes from the Sacramento Zoo and also some Downey Brand swag. And the way to win those prizes is to answer questions based on what we've learned during the past hour. So make sure you pay attention and we'll get you time to get ready at the end to answer those questions and win the prizes. So with that, and without further ado, we're going to go ahead and launch our first poll.
Do you see that poll, Liz?
I do, and so you all should see two questions up on your screen. We're always curious to find out. We know we have a crowd from all over, and so it's always interesting to know who is in the Sacramento region and who has been to the zoo before. And of course, it's also interesting to find out what your favorite animals are at the zoo, and I guarantee we will be meeting some of them today.
All right, I'm just gonna, we have, looks like about almost 70% people have voted. I'm just gonna wait one more second and see if we can get a few more, and then I will end the poll and we'll see the results. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and end the poll. Wow, we're at 80%, that's great.
I'm very excited.
Sharing the results.
Perfect, thank you. All right, let's see what we found out. We have some folks who've never been to the Sacramento Zoo. Well, welcome. We're excited to show you what's here, and maybe it'll tempt you to come visit us in the future. And I see we have quite a few people who come to the zoo at least once a year. Fantastic. And we hope that we see you on site again in person soon. That's great. Now let's see. Favorite animal? Oh, giraffe. We will be meeting a giraffe later today. We have parrots, snakes, tigers, a good spread in terms of what people like. Thanks so much, Mary, for launching that poll. All right. Now, without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Kate, Brooke, and Julio.
My name is Brooke, and I'm one of the educators here at the zoo, and behind the screen is Kate, and right here is Julio. Julio is a blue and gold macaw, and this is a species of parrot found down in the rainforest of South America. You may notice that Julio is very brightly colored. Now, he wouldn't camouflage very well here in the Sacramento area, but down in the rainforest, there are a lot of brightly colored plants and flowers and fruits that help Julio blend in. So you'll notice he gets his name Blue and Gold Macaw because he has blue all the way down his back and yellow all the way down the front. Now, believe it or not, this actually is part of his camouflage. That yellow on his belly and his underside helps him blend in from predators that are down on the ground looking up into the trees. they might see that yellow on his belly and think, oh, that's just a bunch of bananas. Or maybe that's the sunlight coming through the trees. And then that blue on his back will actually help him camouflage from predators above, say maybe hawks or eagles that are looking down into the trees. They see that blue on his back and they think, oh, that's just the water, or that's just maybe a flowering plant down on the ground in the rainforest. So it helps him blend in from two different areas because he actually does have a lot of predators in the rainforest. You may also notice those stripes on his face.
Let's take
now,
a look.
When we ask about those stripes, a lot of people think that they are part of his camouflage, like a zebra's stripes. But in fact, they are actually kind of like his built-in sunglasses. So he has that white face, and without those black lines, the sunlight would come down through the trees, hit that face, and bounce into his eyes. Obviously, macaws can't wear sunglasses out in the rainforests of South America, nor do I think they make parrot sunglasses. So he has those black stripes to help redirect the sun away from his eyes. It's the same idea as when baseball players and football players paint that black on their cheeks to keep the sun from reflecting into their eyes. So he kind of has that built-in sunglasses right there. Pretty great. Now, one of the questions we get about Julio is, how old is he? He is actually 29 years old, and believe it or not, that's not even quite middle-aged for him. Julio can live to be 60 to 70 years in human care, so they are a really long-lived species of bird. Another question we get is, can he talk? And yes, he can. Now, out in the wild, they would not be speaking English. If anything, down in South America, they'd be speaking Spanish, but they wouldn't be speaking human words. They have the same vocal cords that we do, and this allows them to make a lot of the same noises that we can. But in the wild, they use that ability to mimic sounds that they hear and create a language amongst themselves to communicate different things. But Julio was born and raised in human care, so he has learned to mimic some of the words that he hears. So he can say hi, and his name Julio. We'll see if he'll say it for us. Say hi. Oh, that wasn't very clear. Let's try again. Say hi. That was a little better. Let's try one more time. Say hi. Kind of. His bird. Whenever he, of course, when no one's looking, he says hi, and it's super clear. And then, of course, once the camera turns on, it's bleh. What's your name? Oh, that was a little better. He said Julio. Now, Julio, he is trained. So he learned how to say those words on his own. And then once he started saying them, we would say, good, hi, and we'd run over and we'd give him a bunch of seeds. And he started to learn, like, ooh, making this noise makes the people get very excited and run over and give me treats. So he started saying it more, and we were able to put it on a cue. He also has some other behaviors that allow him to show off his natural abilities. One of them is showing off his big wings. So we'll see if he wants to show it for us today. Big wings. Good job, Julio. That's a nice foot. Can I have your foot? Now, he gives us his foot because we actually do regular nail trims with him here at the zoo, and we want it to be a really positive experience. So I just tap his foot, and I ask for his foot, and he'll hand it right over. That way we can clip his nails and file them down. Now I'm going to reward all of those behaviors with a huge walnut, and while we are watching him eat that, oh, he wants to be on the perch, okay. While we are watching him eat that walnut, we'll take any questions that anyone has about Julio. Liz, does anyone have any questions?
I don't see any questions yet in the box, but if you have a question about Julio, please go ahead and bounce it in. While we're waiting, I was wondering, tell us a little bit more about how he spends his day.
Yeah, absolutely. So here at the zoo, he lives in what we call the interpretive center, which is where all of our education animals live. And he shares the building with two other parrots, but he does not share the same actual space with them because Julio's a lot bigger than the other parrots. And as you can see, he's very into his seeds and nuts. And he is actually a little bit of a thief. And he will climb down onto the other bird's house and steal all of their best food and scare them away. So he's not allowed to be around and close to the other birds because they wouldn't get anything to eat because he would just eat it all. But we're around him all day. He has trainers that work with him 7 days a week. And so he gets a lot of attention and a lot of training with us.
All right, well, we now have a lot of questions. I'm going to try and answer quickly. Good job, everyone. We want to know, how strong is his beak?
Oh, excellent question. He has about 250 pounds of pressure in that beak. That's obviously enough to crack right into that walnut. I did not help him out with that at all. He was able to crack into it. It's strong enough to hold his entire body weight from a branch, so he can actually hold with his beak onto a branch and hang by his beak. And it's even strong enough to crack a broomstick right in half. So really, really strong beak that definitely helps him out in the wild.
Perfect. Our next question is, how does he deal with the heat?
Good question. Well, Julio is one of the lucky few at the zoo that actually lives indoors. So his indoor space remains at a nice 68 to 72 degrees at all times. But we do bring him out for programs. Well, when we were doing programs, we would bring him out, and we would just make sure to monitor him in the sun when it was too hot. If he did get hot, you'd see him open his mouth and kind of breathing, panting heavy, and that's kind of his way to cool down. Or he'll kind of flap his wings to get some air under there. So definitely we as keepers, we make sure that we are not letting him get overheated, but he definitely is the lucky one that gets to live in the AC.
Well, it sounds like he deals with heat like us, panting.
Yeah, pretty much exactly like us. He doesn't love it, but you know.
All right, we have more questions. We have, can you tell us again how old Julio is?
Julio is 29 years old.
And our next question is, was Julio born at the zoo? And how many birds are born at the Sacramento Zoo?
Julio was not born at the zoo. He was actually born at an aviary in the Bay Area, and he came to us when he was just a few months old from that aviary. I don't know exactly, I don't know if I have a number of how many birds are born, but we definitely have some really prolific thick-billed parrots that have eggs every year. In the past years, we've had flamingo eggs as well, and those are kind of our top bird breeders that we've had in the past. We've also bred burrowing owls. But each year it really is different depending on the individuals themselves, the circumstances of, you know, is it hotter than normal? Was there something different in the environment that might change how many or how few eggs they lay? But we definitely do have some birds that breed here.
And I'll give you one more question because I know we have to move on to our next animal. A couple folks want to know about the green color on Julio's head. And is that camouflage or what's that for?
Yeah, absolutely. That is part of his camouflage as well. He does have this little patch of green right here on his head, and that's just an extra part of his camouflage. If you imagine the rainforest, there's obviously a lot of green there. And so having predators all around him, below, above, and in front, that green just kind of helps break up his body. It makes it look like there's not one parrot shape here, and it just helps him further blend in. Great question.
All right, and with that, Mary, it's time for our next poll. I want to thank Julio and thank Brooke and Kate for introducing us to him. And now you can go relax in the cool weather for the rest of the day.
Perfect.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and launch the next poll, Liz.
All right, you should see the next poll on your screen. What color is an okapi's tongue? Some of you may already know the answer because you've seen our okapis. And I know you're all in front of computers, no cheating with Google.
Yeah, no cheating. All right, interesting. We're almost done. We have 60% going on 70%. I'll give it another second and then we'll share the results.
And also, again, you folks who ask questions that we haven't quite gotten to, we'll make sure we get to those questions later. And if you have questions as we start with an animal, make sure you get them in right away. So we'll try and get through as many as we can.
Yeah, Liz, we can type in some of those answers ourselves too. I'm going to go ahead and share the results.
All right, let's see. Oh, well, some of you may, we have our top contenders are purple and black. The correct answer is purple, but admittedly, it's a purplish black. So I think I'm going to go ahead and give you partial credit for the majority of you who went with black. You're pretty close. But perhaps the best way to tell what color an okapi's tongue is to see an okapi. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Chris and Bailey and Mo and Forrest.
Hi, everybody. My name is Bailey, and this is Chris, and she's going to tell us all about okapi. So the question was, what color is the okapi tongue? It is kind of a bluish, purplish, black in color. So you can see that tongue going out there. They have a very long tongue, just like a giraffe. It can be about 18 inches long, and it's prehensile. I don't know if you can see how he wraps his tongue around that food to pull it off. And that tongue is used to just rip and pull those leaves and strip them off those branches. And okapis eat all kinds of food. They actually eat about 100 different types of plants, including like fungi. So a wide variety diet. And they're mainly browsers, so a lot of leaves and stuff. So this is Mo, by the way. He's our 8-year-old okapi that we have here at the Sacramento Zoo. We're very proud of him and his kind of neighbor, who is Forrest, our 2-year-old okapi. He'll be 3 soon. And actually, Mo's birthday is on September 6th, so he's going to turn a year older also. And Mo is an okapi. It's a lot of people call them okapi, but the proper way to say it is okapi. And they are a very rare endangered animal found in the Congo in Africa. And they are very cool looking animals. So if you look at him, you'll see there's a lot of similarities between a giraffe. They have the ossicones like a giraffe does, and that's because they're the only living relative to a giraffe. So they do have some of the similarities. So the ossicones, only the boys have ossicones. The girls do not. And this is actually full size for those ossicones. They're not as big as giraffes. And then check out those big ears he has. Big, beautiful ears for excellent hearing. These guys use those ears to listen for leopards or humans or other predators that might be coming. They also use those big ears to listen for the communication with one another with the okapis. Most of the sound they make is too low for us to hear. So okapis are solitary, which means they live by themselves. So they're going to be distanced from each other. So they need to have the big ears to be able to hear that communication with other okapis, especially when it's breeding season and males are looking for females. Now, if you look at Mo, the rest of his body, he looks like a zebra. A lot of people thought at first they related to zebras because of that. But we have found since they are truly related to giraffes only. They are not a mixed species, but they're very beautiful. And that stripe pattern is individual for each okapi. So it's like our fingerprint. And the stripes help with camouflage in the thick forest area in the Congo. It also helps the calves to follow the moms when they're going through the forest. So pretty cool. And then their tongue, again, is so long that they can groom their eyes and they can reach their ears. And they actually will groom the front part of their body and stuff too and reach their body and stuff. So that tongue is very, very important to the okapi. And Mo, he's checking out things. He says you ran out of food. But Mo has a lot of cool personalities. He's a favorite that loves attention from the keepers. He loves his scratches. So he is pretty, there's that tongue. So he is a pretty cool addition here at Sacramento Zoo. We're the only place in Northern California you can see these beautiful animals. Do we happen to have any questions?
We do. Thank you so much. We have a question. Do okapi like to eat carrots? And I'll say, maybe tell us a little more about what they eat.
They do like to eat carrots. We do have a board set up. Each okapi is individual tastes like people. So they each have different things that they like, but they definitely eat carrots. They also like sweet potato. They eat, there we go, we want some rubs. They like zucchini. They even eat a little bit of fruit. So they get a wide for that. They also get some herbivore pellets here at the zoo. So it's just like this pellet that has all the stuff that they would like. And actually there's a piece of carrot right there. Did you want that, Mo? He says, yes, I do. So they do eat a wide variety of the different plants and like I said, fungi. They're even able to eat toxic plants. And they'll even eat charcoal and clay to help out with that toxicity feel that's there. As you can see, Mo loves to eat.
We also have another question. Why do okapis look so much like horses? Why don't they look like giraffes?
Well, they need to be smaller. Living in a thick forest area, if they were really tall like a giraffe, they'd have a hard time getting through all that vegetation. And so they're smaller and shorter like a horse. But if you do look at the head and neck area, it's very giraffe looking. So they've actually, their history goes back further than giraffes. So they're built to live in a thick forest area where a giraffe is learned to be in an open savanna area. So that's why their body shapes are a little different.
And we were also asked, thank you, whether or not Mo and Forrest are friendly. And I know the answer to that, probably we can see on video.
Yes, they're both very friendly. Like I said, Mo, he loves the attention. He loves scratches. And he comes up, he loves to have his ossicones rubbed. Forrest loves like his ear rubbed and the inside of his ear and stuff. So they do look for some of that attention from the keepers. And then when they're done, they just walk away. So our two okapis are pretty keeper friendly and pretty friendly with that. And they're actually friendly enough that we can do behind the scenes and have people sign up and come and meet the okapis also, which is pretty cool.
Which is a wonderful thing to do. They feel very soft. Can you tell us a little bit about why okapis are endangered? That's another question we have.
So okapis are endangered, and they think one of the main reasons is deforestation for okapis. And So they live in a thick forest area. Like I said, they're designed to be in a forest. So if they lose that habitat, it makes it harder for them to survive. So they don't have the coverage for protection, the food to eat. The other is there's a lot of human conflict going on in that area, in the Congo area. So they do kill them for bushmeat. And then there's a lot of mining that's going on. So besides the deforestation of taking down trees for making stuff, they're destroying the forest for mining different minerals. And one of the minerals that they mine for is stuff that's used for our cell phones. So one way you can help out okapis is to not buy a new cell phone like every 6 months. Because the more we have cell phones, the more they're going to try to mine for that mineral. So that's some of the main reasons why these guys are endangered.
So I'll ask another question. Do okapis have predators?
Do okapis have predators? Yes. Their main predators is leopards out there. Leopards and humans are their main predators.
And then also, do okapis eat bugs or insects?
Not really. They're kind of strictly what we call herbivores or plant eaters. And so they eat a wide variety of plants. So they might eat occasionally some bugs that happen to be on maybe some leaves or some petals or something that they're eating, but they do not seek out any bugs.
All right, let me see if I can find some more. Do we have time for more questions?
Looks like we are getting to that time.
All right, well, we'll answer the rest of your questions in writing. I'm great. It's so exciting to see so many folks answer or ask questions about our okapis. I did see they've been at the Sacramento Zoo since February of 2019, I believe, is when we opened the habitat. So and again, as Chris mentioned, we're the only zoo in Northern California that has them. And of course, they're very unusual. They're unforgettable when you see them in person. Thank you so much. All right, thank you. We'll now move on to our next animal. Let's see. We have Kate and Brooke with Butternut, our prehensile-tailed porcupine.
Yep. Hi, everyone. We are here back with us. I'm going to flip the camera around so that you can see our next guest because Kate has her coming out right now.
That's right. So up next, we have Butternut. She is our prehensile-tailed porcupine. And this is her travel carrier, and she has to remember that the door is now open, and then she'll explore a little bit. So you can actually see on Butternut's face right now that really big nose of hers. So she is very driven by scent. So she uses that sense of smell to help find her food. So she always is investigating with that very large nose. On a lot of animals, if they have a really big feature, maybe it's big eyes, big ears, big nose in this case, that feature usually is one of those primary senses that is helping them kind of figure out what is around them. For Butternut, hopefully will help kind of encourage her to explore a little bit. I have a piece of apple right here that she might be very interested in if she would like to come. She's very smart. She knows that she comes to this specific pole now. She might touch it with her nose. Oh, she got there. Good job, Butternut. And then she'll take that. And as she'll get to see her eat it, you'll actually get to see her teeth as well. So for Butternut, when she's eating fruit, and they would be eating fruit out in kind of the wild of even Brazil, think that kind of thick jungle, that rainforest. And her rodent teeth really help her break into those fruit and get all of that kind of nutrients out of those. So really important for her because there's a lot of thick fruit rinds out there. And so she will then move her way up to the branch and show you because how well she moves on these trees, or in this case, a sort of tree, because they are arboreal, meaning they like to spend a lot of their time up high in trees. Good job, Butternut. And so here she's getting a lot of her favorite fruits as a reward for doing a behavior that we've asked her. Maybe it's moving, it's going to this target pole. So here we have this once was brightly colored end on a pole. And when she touches the tip with her nose, we'll say good. And then she gets a reward and not the giant reward yet. So there she is eating some banana. Now you can see her kind of use her hands, but you might also be seeing her really kind of be able to hold her own body weight with her feet, with her tail. So she's called a prehensile-tailed porcupine because her tail actually acts like another appendage. It helps kind of hold on to different areas and locations. The camera different, we've done some things. And so we'll see if she's interested. You can actually see on her tail, it gives you a really good look at her tail. You'll notice that the spines that are on her back, those quills, they don't really go all the way to her tail. And so that way when she wraps around a branch, she isn't in danger of poking herself. Now Butternut, as she comes on out and investigates her environment again, good job, Butternut. Right on up, Butternut. Now here you can see, we'll see if we can get a good look at some of these quills. Now these porcupines are covered in these nice long quills. These are actually modified hairs. So what happens is she'll stick up, kind of tense her muscles, stick up these quills. So that way when a predator or something that might, or even kind of certain noises, she'll puff up those quills, be ready to poke. And they might even just kind of like tap those quills to it, and it'll kind of lodge in that other animal's skin.
She says, more please.
She does. Let's see if Butternut's ready to rise. Good. There we go. You can really see the full extent of her body with a really favorite treat. Yam, always a favorite. Now, as we're looking too, she might also use some of her other senses. So she has hearing. So that's where I'm saying, you know, she might stick up those quills for defense if she hears a certain predator coming or certain noises. And then she also has these nice long whiskers to help her kind of navigate in her world. Now, her eyesight is not the best. So she is not the best seer, but she uses those other senses to help kind of navigate her world. She also has those fairly long claws. Those aren't necessarily for defense like we would think on certain animals, maybe like a lion or something, but instead help kind of just grab onto any kind of branching so that way she can move around. Now, Butternut specifically came to us fairly recently. We got her in around January, maybe a little bit. Oh, I know. Did that make a noise? There we go, that example. See, certain noise, immediately kind of just tense up those muscles, get those quills ready. You can see how much more bigger she looks, right? She's gonna puff up so that way she looks intimidating. And then those quills, each one of them has kind of barbed edges. So they're sharp and pointed. So that way, when they touch an animal's skin, they might get lodged in and stick a bit more. That animal would think twice before messing with a porcupine.
If I can jump in, I just wanted to point out that we as trainers, we made sure to make that crate a really safe and positive space for her. So you'll notice if she hears a sound or if that perch moves and it kind of startles her, you notice that she goes right back to that crate because she remembers that that was a really positive, really safe space for her. So whenever we're doing programs with her, we always keep the crate close by and open. That way, if she does feel a little bit uncomfortable, she has a place that she can go.
Now, right now, she's very comfortable. So she's laying these quills down nice and flat. She's not worried that there's a predator or that there is a certain sound that might have been startling. Everybody nice and tall. Good job.
Okay, we have a lot of questions.
Okay, then we can handle a lot of
I'm very
questions.
interested in the quills, and I think you've covered some of them about how sharp are they if you got poked with one of those quills?
I mean, they're sharp enough. I've never gotten one too deep, but sometimes their quills are sharp enough that you might need extra special tools to help kind of get them out. But for animals, for those predators, even if they do kind of come out, it could potentially get infected for a predator, and it would be really damaging. So those quills are an excellent defense for this particular animal, especially since they seem large to us for a porcupine, but overall, in the grand scheme of things, they're not the biggest thing around. There are lots of potential predators. So having something like that is a really good defense.
So we have a couple folks who want to know if porcupines actually can shoot their quills out.
Ooh, that's a really good question. Really kind of common, perpetuated by like movies and cartoons. They cannot. So just like we can't shoot out our own hairs, she can't shoot out her hairs as much as she would try.
Sorry, guys. The perch started to go a little asunder there, so we had to jump in.
But no, they can't shoot them out. So they do fall out. So you can actually see here is a quill that has fallen out. So just like our hairs, we lose hair all the time when you brush. Or just kind of on a day-to-day basis. But for her, they do that as well. She just can't shoot them out. So she's hoping that predator will actually kind of pop into them, like touch it, and that will actually lodge those quills.
Okay, we have some more questions. First of all, can you tell us how old Butternut is?
Yeah, Butternut is about 1.5 years old. So she came to us in January at about 6 months old. So she's still pretty young, but she's about full size now, and so this is roughly as big as she's gonna get. She's taken to training really well. She's a very kind of smart creature, so that way she could quickly learn what we have, and that's one of the advantages of us getting her when she was about 6 months old.
All right, and we have another question. Where would we find prehensile-tailed porcupines in the wild?
Excellent question. So, like we talked about, they're arboreal, and you would find them in South America. So these guys would be found a lot lower. So she's called a Brazilian prehensile-tailed porcupine as well, and you're investigating everything. She's smelling, she's kind of getting in the surroundings, but they would be found in those rainforest settings. So down in South America, if you think about a rainforest, it's densely kind of packed it tight with all of those trees, all of that foliage, all that vegetation, including lots of potential food for her. So lots of fruits that she can get into.
Okay, more questions. I'll try and give you some quick ones. Can you tell us what what predators she would have.
I would think any like cats that would be down there could be potential predators. Anything too where even if they caught her while she was sleeping, her belly is in exposure. So if there's certain animals that might be able to get under and to where her belly is, those quills are just a little bit different. So when she does kind of puff up, she doesn't poke herself. So there are lots of potential, usually carnivores, predators that can get a hold of her out there. I mean, jaguars live there. I don't know if margays or anyone else would be big enough to take down a prehensile tailed porcupine, but I'm sure they've probably given it a go.
And then we have a few folks who want to make sure they understand what she eats. Can you talk a little bit? Does she eat bugs? Is she a herbivore? That kind of thing.
So I'm only giving her plants. So she's an herbivore. She eats specifically fruit, but she does eat vegetables here at the zoo as well. In fact, I think it's time for one of our nice big jackpots. So this is actually a carrot. And so she might like a really big piece of that, or she's getting into some nuts. And that is good too. Since Julio and her might live in the same habitat, she can investigate the same thing. So pine nuts, sunflower seeds, almonds, all of those are okay for her to investigate as well. And she has those really sharp rodent teeth that help her break into it. So Butternut's red. Oh,
Did you see her open
there
the
we
door?
go.
She opened her own crate door
There's
with
the
her tail.
prehensile tail. Now Butternut's ready. There we go. I'm gonna enjoy your nice carrot. You guys can get, oh, no, we're investigating. She's on investigation mode.
And Mary, I'll just check in. Is it time for us to move on, or? Oh.
Almost, maybe. She's really investigating.
We have another animal over here, though. We don't want them to interact.
It's time.
Okay, thank you so much, Butternut, one of the cutest noses of the animal kingdom. Thank you for showing her off for us. And now we will move on to our next poll question, and Mary will go ahead and launch it.
Sounds great. Here we go.
All right, what is the meerkat's most important job?
Sorry, when you asked me the question, Liz, I had my thing on mute. All right, we're at 65%, so I'm going to go ahead and end the poll.
All right, let's see what everyone said. Everybody knows everything already. Correct, we got our top answers, 69%, looking out for danger. That is absolutely correct. Some good guesses from the other folks who participated in the poll. And now, of course, since we've asked you about meerkats, we're going to go meet the Sacramento Zoo's meerkats. And this is actually pretty special because we're going to be behind the scenes in their habitat. And so I will turn it over to the meerkats.
Hi, everybody. Welcome. My name is Laura, and with me behind the camera, I have Anne. And we are here in the meerkat exhibit with our meerkats. I actually have a special enrichment. There are bugs, crickets, and worms inside these boxes. So I have a tube of worms, and we have 5 meerkats here. I'm going to toss some of these things out and see if they would like to explore and have a little bit of an enrichment. Now, we do have 5 meerkats, all girls here. It's a mom, Kiki, she's 10, and her 4 daughters, Lizzie, Snaggletooth, and Pringle are 7, or 6 rather, and then little Bailey is 3. Now, these animals live in small family groups out in the wild, maybe 2 to 3 families, all teaming up together to do the important roles that they have in their society. Now, our meerkats, as we learned from our poll, have special roles to do in their society. And in fact, we have our sentry right up there that Anne's going to show you. While the other animals are foraging for food and searching for all kinds of things to explore, that sentry is hard at work making sure that the safety of the group is tantamount. Now, those roles may change, but that is indeed one of the more important roles. Now, here in the zoo, we actually manage this as a female group, but out in the wild, they actually might live in small family groups, and in zoos, they're managed in a wide variety of ways. So we have our females here, and believe it or not, the dad and the males are off at the Fresno Zoo. So zoos often manage these animals in a wide variety of ways. Now take a look at their adaptations. There's no boxes out there in the wilds of Africa, but these animals live in dry desert regions and have to have great skills in order to survive. Their long claws help them reach under rocks and crevices and dig out the bugs that they like to eat. In addition to insects and bugs, They also will be eating small invertebrates, eggs, maybe even birds. And believe it or not, they love to eat reptiles. And they have partial immunity to venomous reptiles and will be able to put them on the menu as well. Look at them gobbling up those worms. These are tiny mealworms and, of course, crickets. Here comes our fourth meerkat coming off to the side, joining on in. And, of course, that sentry is hard at work up top. Now, out in the wild, there are tons of predators for these meerkats. They are pretty much food for everything out in the desert regions. So they have to keep a sharp lookout and be worried about predators that come from the air as well as from underground. And these animals are super communicative. They're pretty quiet now because they're gobbling up their treats. But out in the wild, as well as here, when they notice danger, they call to each other with a wide variety of vocalizations. They might bark, chirp, hiss, growl. All of those calls mean something different. Maybe the aerial predators are coming and they have to run underground. Maybe the aardvark in the neighboring exhibit is coming over and they have to go see what's happening. So you never know what they're going to have to tell the different members of their group in order to keep the group safe. Now notice that this tube here on the end, I've closed the end of this tube and it's kind of hard for them to get in. So I'm going to open it a little bit for them and we'll see if they'll use their nose and their claws to get those tiny worms out of those tubes. These animals are diurnal. They spend their days awake and their nights asleep. When it gets really hot out in the desert, they might actually turn to become crepuscular, early morning and early evening activity levels, and then spending that hot part of the day actually sleeping and napping in their deep burrows. We notice their claws, but their claws are not as sharp as needed to always dig their burrows. So sometimes these animals steal a burrow that's been dug by a squirrel or some other animal, even though they are perfectly able to dig their own. Now, their underground burrows have many chambers and tunnels, and they're perfectly angled so the animals can escape if need be. There's always a variety of back doors and side doors, and believe it or not, those burrows are temperature regulated. So in the hot African sun, it stays nice and cool underground for these meerkats. One last thing that you'll find interesting about meerkats, as this one is in here trying to find if there's anything left in that cup, they rarely if ever drink water. They live where it's so hot that they get moist of the moisture they need from the vegetation that they eat. They will find roots and tubers and fallen fruit out in Africa, but believe it or not, the inside of those bugs has a lot of moisture for them to eat. Now, within the group called a mob of the meerkat society, there is a bit of a dominance hierarchy, so to speak. It's not linear, you don't inherit it from your parents, but females are in charge. This is a matriarchal society, so the mom here, Kiki, kind of rules the roost. Her oldest daughter, Snaggletooth, sometimes tries to take that alpha role from her, I'm told by the keepers, but they're working it out pretty nicely. So out in the wild, they actually have a nice organization in their habitat and in their societies where everyone plays an important role and an important niche. Pretty fun little animals.
Thank you so much. I know we've been getting through a lot of questions, so I'm just going to ask you a couple quick ones and then we'll move on to our next animal.
Sure.
Can you tell us, can you tell meerkats apart or do they all look the same?
You can tell them apart, and in fact, these here all have different markings on their face, and Kiki has a skin tag on her face that allows us to tell them apart, and then believe it or not, their personalities are very different, so we can tell them apart by how they behave.
And another question we have is that they're often, when people go to the zoo, they see them snuggling together. Why do they do that?
These animals are social. They crave the friendship of their group. They also like to stay warm that way. Just the other day, we brought our desert tortoise over, and as all of our meerkats were lined up watching, they had their arms and legs all wrapped around each other for comfort, just to let each other know that that desert tortoise was of no harm to the group. That's a great question.
I have one more question, and for our Lion King fans out there, can meerkats live with warthogs?
I have seen mixed species exhibit. However, these are tunnel diggers. So you have to be very careful when you put an animal in their exhibit that they're not going to get tripped up in all those burrows.
That's a perfect answer. All right, thanks so much, Laura. Thanks to our meerkats. And now I think we're going to go ahead and move on to our next animals. We're back to Kate and Brooke.
Hi, again, and I am here with Bradshaw, our Colombian boa constrictor. Now, so far, Brooke and Kate have presented all rainforest animals, and this one is no exception. He would live down in the rainforest of South America, the same habitat as Julio, the blue and gold macaw, and the same habitat as Butternut, the prehensile-tailed porcupine. Now, he is a boa constrictor, which means that he does not have any venom whatsoever. He kills his prey by wrapping his body really tight around it and giving it a nice big hug, but it's not quite as nice as maybe our hugs would be. But he squeezes it until it can't breathe anymore, and then once it's dead, he swallows it whole. So if you take a look at his big body, he has this kind of wide part here in the middle, and anything that can fit in that widest part of his body can fit into his mouth. So his head is significantly smaller.
You can actually kind of see the comparison.
Yeah, his head is significantly smaller than the rest of his body, but they have a really specially designed skull and jawbones. So whereas we have one bone down on the bottom, he has two separate bones. He has a bone on this side and a jawbone on this side, and they're connected with a stretchy ligament, and they also connect a slightly different way in his skull. So rather than being able to open his mouth like this, he can open his mouth like this. And the whole thing opens, and then he doesn't have any hands, obviously, to push his food into his mouth. So he takes one side of his jaw and he sticks it into his prey, and then he takes the other side of his jaw, sticks it into his prey, and up and up and up, and he pulls that animal into his mouth. Now, he doesn't have any fangs in his mouth because he doesn't have any venom, so he doesn't need huge fangs. But he does have backward-facing teeth, and that means that once he grabs his food, it can't really get back out. So everything about his head is specially made for catching whole prey and swallowing very large things. Even his neck right here is really, really stretchy, and he has a lot of kind of stretchy skin and scales that can widen to allow some pretty large predators, or prey, I'm sorry. But he's obviously not big enough to eat, say, a human. He's gonna be eating things like rats, mice, frogs, other snakes, perhaps maybe even birds. So he is what we call a sit and wait predator. He's very large, and he can't slither really fast, and he certainly can't chase down his prey. So he relies on his camouflage here on his scales, and he kind of just curls up on the rainforest floor and doesn't move. And then prey animals, unassuming prey animals, they just walk on by and they think this is just a pile of leaves because he's so perfectly blended in with the rainforest floor. Then as they come near, he strikes out with his mouth, he grabs them, and then he wraps his body around them. So he is a very patient kind of animal. He definitely can go a long time without eating because they eat really large meals all at once. So once he eats, he takes about 5 days to digest that food, and then he either moves to a new location or he hunkers back down and waits for the next prey animal to walk on by. Are there any questions about Bradshaw?
We have so many questions. I'll just give you a couple. Can you tell us how big a Colombian boa like Bradshaw can get? And also tell us why we've seen him putting his tongue out.
Yes, absolutely. So Bradshaw is about 6 to 7 feet long right now. And that's around full size for a male Colombian boa. But females actually get larger. Females can get up to 9 feet long. He was, in fact, found loose here in the Sacramento area. So obviously they're not a native species, but they are common in the pet trade. And we assume that he either got out or was let go. And he was just found slithering along Bradshaw Road, and someone came across him. And so he found his forever home here at the zoo, and that's where he got the name Bradshaw. He sticks out his tongue because snakes actually use their tongue for smelling. So he sticks his tongue out and he picks up all these scent particles in the air. And he has something on the roof of his mouth called a Jacobson's organ. And that's what tells his brain what things smell like. So he sticks out that tongue, picks up all of those scent molecules and brushes them past that Jacobson's organ. And he's basically gathering information from the world around him. So he's sniffing the table, sniffing Kate's phone, seeing if there's any food to be had, or just kind of generally getting some information about where he is.
That's great. All right, and we'll just do one real quick one. Can you talk about who might be a predator of Bradshaw?
I'm going to take that one. So that's a very good question. Bradshaw might have potential predators. Again, kind of those larger carnivores could get a hold of him. He doesn't have venom, so he couldn't take down something bigger than that. He's potentially vulnerable to those types of animals as well. So just like Butternut, there are lots of potential predators out in the rainforest. I typically think of like kind of cats and those large things, but also there could even be birds of prey that may get something. I mean, they couldn't usually fly away with something as big as him, but they could definitely do some damage with talons. So he is still very vulnerable out in the wild. Are you guys ready for our next one here? I'll flip the camera over to Brooke.
All right, you didn't tell me you were in for a magic show, but I had a snake and now I have an owl. Woo! So this is Charley. First off, thank you guys for your questions about Bradshaw, but we're going to move on to our next animal. This is Charley, and he is a great horned owl. And this owl is actually so widespread throughout the United States. They have a really big range because they're really well adapted to a lot of different habitats. And depending on where you find them in the United States, they have very small, very slight differences on how they look. Believe it or not, Charley is actually a Texas owl. So he does, in fact, look a little bit different than the great horned owls that we have around here.
A little bit of a yeehaw in his hoot.
Yes, a little bit of a yeehaw. So great horned owl is that owl that has that really characteristic hooting sound. So if you're out walking at dusk or dawn and you hear woo, 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 you gonna do it for us? Woo, woo, woo. No. He doesn't ever do it for me. If Mike were here, he would be hooting up a storm, but not for me. Now he gets his name great horned owl because he has these little feathers on his head. He doesn't like when I touch those feathers. They're called plumicorns, and he sticks them up or puts them down depending on kind of where he is, his mood. He can use them as a way to kind of communicate his mood to other owls, but he also uses them as camouflage. It breaks up his body shape and it makes it look like there's not one big owl. But he also has really great camouflage on his feathers. His feathers are perfectly camouflaged for blending in with tree bark. Now, a great horned owl is an excellent hunter. So he has a lot of things on his body that help him be a superior hunter at night, especially. He has those huge eyes, and that allows him to see really well at night, even just by the light of a partial moon, and or like street lights around where he lives. He can hunt small animals down on the ground. He has that hooked beak that allows him to rip up his prey because he actually hunts fairly large prey. And then if you look down at his feet, he has feathers covering all the way down to the tips of his toes. That allows him to have silent flight. So it actually muffles the sound of his feet through the air. And his feet are really, really strong. In fact, so strong that he can hunt and kill prey animals as big as skunks. Great horned owl is the #1 predator of skunks in this area. Now, he doesn't have a sense of smell. So if he were to catch a skunk and that skunk were to spray him and get him all smelly, it doesn't matter. He doesn't mind because he doesn't have a sense of smell. And during breeding season, the females also don't have a sense of smell. So they don't mind if their mate comes back a little bit stinky as long as they bring home that skunk for dinner. So he's actually a really, really excellent hunter. He has about 400 pounds of pressure in those feet. We talked about Julio's beak has about 250. He has 400 in his feet. And if I were to squeeze my hand as hard as I possibly could, I might get 90 maybe. So comparatively, his feet are really, really strong. Are there any questions about Charley?
Everyone wants to know. Let's talk about him spinning his head around.
Oh, yes, excellent. So a lot of people ask, can owls spin their head all the way around? They can certainly go all the way behind them, 180 degrees, and even a little bit farther than that. So they can go about 270 degrees around. That's about 3/4 of the way around. So he can, looking straight ahead, he could turn his head all the way around and kind of look back at me if he wanted to. And then he has to flip it back the same way and go back the other way. But he certainly can't keep spinning his head. He can't do 360 degrees. But they have 14 bones in their neck, whereas we only have 7. It gives them a greater flexibility, and all of their tendons are a little bit more loose than ours. They have that good flexibility. If you look, his eyes are so large that you can't see any whites of his eyes. So he can't move his eyes in their socket. So in order to look a different direction, he has to actually physically turn his head around. So that's why he has such great mobility there.
Thank you so much. All right, and with that, I know where I'll warn you all. Thank you so much for introducing us to Bradshaw and Charley. And I know we're going to move on to another poll question, our last one of the hour. But I want to let you all know we still have 3 animals left to introduce you to. We're probably running about 10 minutes or so late, but I hope you'll bear with us and get to meet everyone before the show is over. We've just been trying to answer questions, and I think it's putting us a little behind. So with that, here's our last poll question. How much does a male giraffe weigh? And go ahead and provide your answers. And I promise we won't make anyone pick our male giraffe up to test that theory when we.
All right, so we're at 50%, 65%. So I'm going to go, wow, we're at 75%. I'm going to go ahead and end the poll, Liz, and share the results.
All right, let's see what you all said. Oh, well, we have our biggest vote was for 1960. That's actually not correct. The correct answer, our 40%, is close to 3,000 pounds for a male giraffe. For what it's worth, I think females weigh about half of that on average. And with that, since we're talking about giraffes, we're going to turn things over to Laura and our giraffes.
Hi, everybody. Here we are at yet another animal exhibit. This is Chifu, our male, and I've got some browse. I'm going to see if he wants to come on over and eat some of the treats that I have here in this basket. This is acacia, and this is actually what we grow for him to eat. Take a look at that tongue. He's already showed it to us. Let's see if we can get him to stick that out. Believe it or not, he has an 18-inch long prehensile tongue that he uses like a hand to help reach up to the trees and scrape the leaves off. Now, Chifu is a Maasai giraffe. You'll notice his pattern is very dark, and the lines in between the spots are also dark, and they look like they were drawn with a bit of a squiggly hand. Maasai giraffes are one of the 4 subspecies, and we have 3 of them here at the zoo, 1 male and 2 females. And we have had 1 baby, Rocket, in the past, who's now off at New Jersey. Now you can see Chifu claims he's starving. We do feed him here. This is just his special treat. And you can see as he reaches out, I'm gonna see if we can get him to extend that tongue. There it is. Look how long that is, 18 inches. And they reach out to grab the food from the tops of the trees. Now these animals rarely, if ever, lie down in the wild, and they're not gonna drink water very often because it takes them a while to do so. So they're gonna drink a lot at one time, eat a lot at one time, and then ruminate in the shade. They're like cows. They have multiple chambered stomachs, so they can eat dry, desiccated browse and get all the nutrients and moisture they need out of it, and what comes out is a tiny little pellet in the end. Now, the other thing about these giraffes are their ossicones. You met the okapi earlier with the ossicones on their head. Both males and females have those bony outgrowths from the skull, and males use them to neck. They knock their heads against one another in competition for females or good food browse sites. And males will get tiny little fractures in those, and they'll heal up with calcium deposits. And heavy males will actually have a bunch of those ossicones on their heads. Pretty fantastic, very tall animals, upwards of 18 feet tall for the males. Does anybody have any questions I can answer for you?
A lot of questions. So first of all, if their tongues are really that long, where do they go when they go in their mouth?
Well, look how long their whole head is. It just comes all the way back and goes just right into their mouth. That's a great question. It fits perfectly. It's giraffe sized.
And how long do giraffes live?
They'll live about 20 to 25 years in human care. Out in the wild, not as long. These are actually an animal that's having a lot of conservation issues, and we support a lot of those issues, solutions out in the wild.
Can you tell us why the giraffe's tongue is purple like the okapi's?
That's a good question. They're going to be out in the sun, so it prevents it from getting a little bit sunburnt, perhaps. And it just gives it a little bit of strength. It's a very dryish tongue. It doesn't have a whole lot of saliva on it like ours. And actually, it's very strong, and that purple kind of coloring might just give it a little bit more strength as well.
All right, and then one more question, because I know we had another question about ossicones with okapi too. Can you tell us a little bit about the ossicones?
You bet. So they are bony outgrowths from the skull, and they have them on both males and females. You can see in the distance our 3 ladies over there. They all have ossicones as well. Now, when giraffes are fighting, it's kind of like arm wrestling, but neck wrestling, really. And they take their big heads and they swing them against each other, and the strongest giraffe wins. Can you imagine getting knocked by a giraffe's head as it swings across at you? That would be rather formidable. And I'm told they can even use those ossicones to knock away predators as well.
Thank you. And I have one last question for you. Why are giraffes spotted?
Excellent question. It's camouflage. So believe it or not, even though they're so big, those patterns break up their body shape and make it difficult for predators to see them out in the grasslands of Africa.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Chifu. And now we'll move on to our next animal. We're going to head over to Kate and Brooke and Ronnie.
Hi again, everyone. So the animal guest we were trying to keep away is in this nice kind of pool enclosure right now. So this is Ronnie. Ronnie here is an American alligator. Now he is obviously a young American alligator. He is not quite a full-grown American alligator. Those guys can range anywhere from like 10 to 15 feet, so a lot longer in length. Ronnie here is actually just had his first birthday, so he is a year-old hatch day, I guess. And so what you're going to notice is he's probably, they grow about a foot a year. So for alligators, that's a pretty typical growth rate for a foot a year until they're about 6 years old. And then we consider them pretty mature then, but they keep growing their whole lives. So Ronnie here can get to be like some of those other big alligators, but over a very long period of time. And they can live for quite some time. There's definitely alligators into even their 40s, so they grow a very long time. I mean, if you're talking 15 feet, and once they get past kind of that 6 foot range and 6 years old, they grow about an inch a year, so a lot less. Now Ronnie here, you might see him moving in the water. If you get a good look at his feet, he has feet that are kind of built for a couple different things. Alligators like to still go on land and grass, and so his front feet kind of help him move a little bit on maybe sand or like the banks of water, and then his back feet, you can see a little bit more webbing, and that can help him move smoothly in the water. Now the thing that helps him move the best in the water is that nice long tail, and that works like a rudder, and it kind of helps or even an oar, and it helps kind of propel him through the water, so you guys can get a good look at that. Now obviously in the water, these alligators are very comfortable. They like to eat while they're in the water, and when they're eating, a lot of people, you see alligators maybe with their mouths open as they're sitting on the banks, and what they'll do is they actually kind of often will leave their mouths open because they have like fewer muscles to open their mouth than they do to shut it. So just like that snake you guys saw earlier, Bradshaw, these guys are ambush predators. They like to sit and wait. They don't want to expend a lot of energy. So they'll sit on the edge of that water, maybe with their mouth open, and then they'll snap it shut when prey comes by, and then takes them a while to maybe open it again, or to get up that energy to move once they get to eat that prey. Now you'll notice he can keep an eye out for any potential prey sources with those eyes. His eyes are kind of right on the top of his head, so that way he can be in maybe some murky water. His camouflage will help him blend into maybe a very muddy stream, and then his eyes poke up over the top of his head, so that way he can keep a lookout for any potential prey. Now when he's this little, he also needs to look out for predators. And they might stay a little bit closer to maybe mom or some other alligators, and they will make kind of little chirps and noises. But as he gets older, he will definitely go off on his own and try to get his own food and have a little bit less competition as well. He will not be going out on the lake, but we do have, additionally at the zoo, 4 other male alligators out on our lake over by our flamingos as well. And they're 6 feet long. So those are kind of those adult alligators as well. Now, when we were talking about them eating, and we're talking about how he gets his food, alligators break teeth too all the time, and they can even go through about 3,000 teeth in their lifetime. And you might be able to see Ronnie's teeth as he's moving in the water. They're very small, but they go through so many sets, kind of almost like sharks even. And so that's very important for them to always have a new tooth ready to go to catch their food. Now, as an infant or relatively young alligator, he does have a little bit of different camouflage, but in the wild, or I kind of hear they are a U.S. species, so kind of over by the Gulf, we always think of them as in the Florida and the Everglades, and so they'll look a little bit more murky or kind of muddy instead of having those nice strips. But I think we're ready for questions. So if anybody has any questions about Ronnie here.
Well, first we want to know, was he born with teeth?
So these guys, I imagine they would kind of grow in like babies as well, or they would have kind of smaller, like maybe not quite as hard sets, but they got to be ready to eat right away. So the difference between reptiles and like humans is once they hatch out of the egg, they kind of have to be ready to go into their habitat a little bit more quickly, right? We take a lot more nurturing and care of our young, versus reptiles tend to have a lot of their adaptations on them to get their food maybe a bit more ready to go. He just might not be getting the big prey that his parents might be getting as well, right? He might not be getting something as large, he might be getting smaller items that he can be able to chomp and swallow. And they don't really chew with their teeth necessarily. Those teeth kind of help hold their food. Any other
And
questions?
now can you tell us a little bit about what kind of noises Ronnie might make or adult owl?
Oh, I certainly can't imitate them very well. He does make a little, I call it a chirp. And then the larger males, especially if they're territorial, they'll make kind of what's called a bellow. And you can actually kind of see their neck almost extend when they're making those deep noises. My animal imitation skills are probably not up to snuff for doing alligator chirps.
The little baby chirps are kind of like a
Brooke taking over the animal impressions.
That's kind of what it sounds like.
If you didn't tell us, we wouldn't have known it was you. You could have.
Yeah, we should have said it was Ronnie.
Exactly. Thanks so much. All right, and now we're moving on to our last animal that we're meeting today. We're over with Chris and Bailey and our flamingos.
Yeah, we're going to be with Bailey, who's going to tell us about some of these flamingos.
Thank you, Chris. All right, now hopefully you guys can see there are actually 48 Caribbean flamingos out on our lake here at the Sacramento Zoo. So see if you can count all 48. By the time I'm done talking, I'm sure you're going to get to at least 40. So they are all out there. They're ranging in ages from just about 1 year old all the way to the late 50s or even early 60s. This is a very long-lived bird. And actually, there's one bird that looks pretty different from the others. He's sitting right there, and that is Zamboni, who's actually our pelican. But we won't be talking about him, just wanted to point him out. He does like to hang out with the flamingos here. Now, what we get asked a lot about with the flamingos are, why are they pink? What does it look like when they're born? And how do they get that gorgeous pink color? Well, absolutely, a lot of them do look pink. It'll actually take about 2 to 3 years for that adult coloration to be fully there in that pink. And there are a few different reasons why they turn pink. When they do hatch out, which we've had several flamingos hatch out here at the Sacramento Zoo, one last year, the year before. We even had a year where there were about 5 of them. When they do hatch, we joke around that they kind of look like a little gray, cute, fuzzy moth, right? So they kind of have a gray or a little bit of a white and lighter color. But as their parents feed them crop milk, which is created in their glands, they kind of give that to them, and that is a much deeper red color. It has a lot of those beta carotenes, and then of course from the food that they eat. So Chris will show you there are a few of them eating right now, and a few coming over to say hello. This one here is Cosmo, who's going to come and say hello to us as her keeper is just saying hi. But as you look at them eating, they will absolutely use both feet, which are of course webbed. Living in South America in those marshlands and wetlands, they do have those webbed feet to help them thrive out in the wild. They're going to stomp down with both of those feet and mix up all of the substrate in the water, all of that dirt and mud and sand, to be eating tiny little organisms. Everything from crustaceans to algae to tiny larvae as well, or even krill, smaller shrimp. They'll be eating just about anything they can get their beak around. And their beak is specially designed, Cosmo here can actually show us, specially designed. It's got all of these little fillers that help filter that food into their beak. They're using the stomping of their feet. They're using their tongue, which moves rapidly to filter that food in. And then of course the water, which will kind of whoosh or filter out of their beak there so that they can get a lot of those organisms and that nutrients that they need to survive. So they will actually get that pink coloration as they continue to eat and grow throughout the first 2 to 3 years of their life. That coloration comes, like I said, from the beta carotene and then also from that crop milk. But looking at them as a flock, there's a lot of different things that our guests and we as keepers notice about these flamingos. The first thing is they have a varied level of activity. They're what we call ephemeral, which means they're going to be active in the morning, maybe at noon, maybe at night, maybe take a 3 p.m. nap after a food coma like we all do after lunch, right? But we know from spending the night here at the zoo with our overnight programs and all of our guests, they can be loud at pretty much any time of the day. It's like your kids, right? You want 3 a.m., we've got it for you. 7 a.m., we'll be just as loud. So they are active at varying times of the day, and they get their rest in smaller increments so that they are able to be active throughout the day. They don't necessarily have a bedtime like us, right? So we'll always see them mostly in a flock. Definitely at least 40 of them are going to be hanging out. Sometimes there are smaller groups that will filter up and go to other spots of the lake, but they'll generally hang out here, which is their breeding area. You can see all of those mounds of dirt, which the flamingos actually constructed themselves. It is a long process. We bring that dirt in for them, but they build the mounds to their own specifications. And those mounds are super important when it comes to breeding season. Now, usually we have a few successful pairs that all lay about 1 egg. We track those eggs, we make sure that they aren't taken by predators, and they generally will lay in the middle of the breeding mound until they are ready to hatch. So this is a lot of where they spend their day, especially because there's good food around there too. Now, as those flamingos are walking around, eating, vocalizing, showing all those behaviors, we can take a couple questions and see.
Perfect, thanks so much. I'll ask, first question, why do they stand on one leg?
Oh, that's a great question. We always say this is kind of a loaded question, right? So there are a lot of scientists, a lot of animal behavior studying people that will kind of have different theories about that. First and foremost, they do have to switch that leg because they want to conserve that energy. They want to vary up that blood flow throughout their body, right? Their legs are really skinny compared to the rest of their body. They can weigh anywhere between 5 to 8 pounds. So a lot of the time they're just switching legs because one might fall asleep or they just want to bring the blood flow here. A lot of the time they'll put both down when they're eating, but sometimes they just want to rest one side at a time. Being ephemeral, like I mentioned, or having that varying activity level, they don't really have time where they're just completely asleep all of the time. They've got to save that energy and switch their legs depending on the blood flow, the movement, and then kind of just like we rest certain parts of our body, kind of like that.
Well, and we had you saw Cosmo come up earlier to say hi. We also want to know how you can tell the flamingos apart.
How can we tell them apart? That's a great question. So generally there are going to be varying sizes and color of these birds, right? And like I mentioned, it does take about 2 to 3 years for them to get their adult coloration. So sometimes we can tell them apart by how pink they look. But if you see on Cosmo's leg, right there on her right leg, there is a little number, 42, and it's a little band. So that band goes on and can get switched out if it does need different sizing. At our annual Flamingo Roundup, we get our hands on all these birds, check their bands, their sizes, all of those different things. But that's an identification number. And so that is going to help us ID all of these different birds apart. Now, the bird keepers at the Sacramento Zoo sometimes have their favorites or maybe flamingos that they've personally hand raised, and they're able to identify those birds apart from each other based on very small differences. But we generally will use those bands and their identification numbers to tell them apart.
That's great, thank you. And let's see, we had another question. Will flamingos bite people?
Will flamingos bite people? Absolutely. They will definitely bite people. And it does hurt, right? So a lot of people, especially when Cosmo's up here, they might stick their hands through her hangout and she'll let you know very quickly she will bite, in fact. So they kind of just squeeze onto the skin and they do sometimes want a treat. They think maybe you have something. So they will absolutely bite. That's a great, we say anything with the mouth can bite, right? Great question.
Yeah. And Cosmo lies a lot.
Yep.
She says you can touch her, but you can't.
She's lying.
And then we have one last question. Do they mind having like Zamboni hang out with them or other animals being around them?
Yeah, that's a great question. So these flamingos pretty much go with the flow. There are a lot of different species on this lake, a lot of which don't even belong to the zoo. We've got wild mallards, we have wood ducks, sometimes birds of prey, all manner of other ducks that we have here. We have screamers, we have the pelican. They'll kind of just all hang out. If the pelican were to get too close, Cosmo would definitely let him know that, and then he would just kind of back off. But a lot of the time, he just wants to hang out with the flock and just sit there resting, and the rest of them will just go about their day. Yep.
That's perfect. Thanks so much. And thank you to our flamingos. And now, before we step on to our last part, we want to thank you all for the animals. We do have, as promised, some prizes to award for those of you who've been paying special attention to our presentation today. And so the first prize we have is this little meerkat. And in order to win this prize, what we're going to do is we're going to have you provide the answer in the chat feature. And so basically get ready to type. And the first person who enters their answer correctly is going to go ahead and win this meerkat. And so I'll give you all 10 or 15 seconds. I know a lot of you have been asking questions, so I know you're already there. But here we go. Here's our first question for our meerkat. What gender was our meerkat family group? Look at that. All right, we have overwhelming support. I'm very proud of you all for paying attention. And let's see, our first answer, I have to go all the way back up. We have from Eric Johnson. That meerkat is coming your way.
And I just wanted to chime in real quick too. We're also going to send Eric a few Downey brand items, a insulated water bottle, one of those items. So that will be exciting. And I'm going to go ahead and put my email in the chat so people can email me the winners, and that way I can get their addresses and send off those prizes.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Mary. All right, now our next question, get ready, is for our giraffe and Downey brand swag. And this question is, how long is a giraffe's tongue? Oh, you all make me so proud. Look how many people got the right answer. All right, let's see. And our first person to answer correctly, I have Elizabeth Green at 18 inches. Wow, look at all these answers. Great job, everybody. And then now our last and final question for a flamingo. Everybody ready? How long does it take for a young flamingo to get to their full color? Wow, look at all these answers coming in. Hold on, let me get back to the top. It looks like our first answer where we got at least part of the range is from Aaron Williams, which is 2 to 3 years to get to their full color. And so that's our third winner. But look at this, I have to say, I'm so happy how many of you learned from the presentation and got those answers correctly. And with that, I think I know we had some questions we didn't get a chance to answer. I know we kind of covered some of it. Maybe we'll stick on for a couple more minutes and see if we can scroll through those questions and maybe provide a few more. But other than that, I just want to say thank you so much. On behalf of Downey Brand and the Sacramento Zoo, we thank you for giving us part of your morning, and we hope you and your family had a great time getting behind the scenes and learning about the animals at the zoo. And just have a wonderful weekend, and thanks so much.
Liz, did you want to answer a few more questions, or?
That's what I was thinking, that we could go through some of these and maybe just provide answers if folks want to stick around. We have quite a few questions.
Right. Why don't we just spend the next, we can spend the next 6 or 7 minutes answering a few more questions. We have about 35 people that are still online.
Let's see what we had. I know we covered, well, it looks like we covered some more of these, what they enjoy eating. Julio, I might need help from animal care. Should we talk about, we had a question about okapi eating apples.
Hi, we're still here.
Hey, we're
we
here,
can help.
so we can help you answer questions.
Good, perfect.
The okapi eating apples?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. So it's not part of their regular diet, but okapi and giraffe will certainly eat things like apple, yam, carrot. Out in the wild, they wouldn't eat a lot of really sweet things or things with a lot of sugar. So we can't give them a lot of apples because it actually will mess with their digestive system because it's not part of their everyday diet. So we do give it to them as treats, and we'll put them in little puzzle feeders that's like maybe a bucket with holes in it, and they have to use their tongue to get them out, or a little ball down on the ground that they have to kick, and then it'll kind of similar to slow feeders or puzzle feeders that you use for your dog or cat at home. We have those, but just a much larger version, and we'll put things like apple and yam and carrot in there.
We have another question about okapis. Are they fast?
Yeah, they're pretty fast. I mean, I don't know miles per hour.
I don't know, but I've seen Mo cruise around that exhibit like nobody's business.
Pretty speedy.
Let's see, more questions. We had questions about Butternut. Do porcupines have ears? Where are they?
Yes, so they're actually her quills kind of come almost forward. It's very hard to see. But it's almost like the cartilage is folded in, so it's just this little hole with a tiny bit of cartilage right underneath some of those quills, but you can see them, and they do have ears.
And what about, do we have any idea how many spikes Butternut has, or an adult prehensile tail porcupine would have?
A lot.
I know.
3,000 to 3,500 spines.
Well,
or
a North American porcupine has about 30,000 quills, and since they're smaller, yeah, it's probably gonna be closer to maybe 20,000 quills.
All right, let's see what else we have in here. I think we covered what she likes to eat. What about where does Butternut sleep?
So Butternut actually lives at the Interpretive Center, which is attached to our amphitheater, so where we do stage shows and that type of stuff. So she lives in a building in there, so she gets her full house. It's nice and tall, so that way she can climb and do all of those natural things that they would do in the wild too, just inside as well.
All right, and would you pick up a porcupine?
Not without gloves.
Oh, I remember somebody had that as a question. Why do you wear those big gloves?
Mm-hmm.
There are a couple zoos that handle their prehensile tail porcupine without gloves, but Butternut's still pretty young and we're still working on that.
Yeah, it's definitely a new behavior for her, and she doesn't love being picked up. And so we'll do it if we need to move her from one place to another. And then as she gets older and she gets more comfortable with that, we can maybe look at not using the gloves. We'll see. We'll basically just gauge her behavior. But for now, because things are so new to her and she does sometimes get spooked and puts those quills up, we don't want that to happen when she's on our flesh.
Yep. And then we have some questions about meerkats. Some folks wanted to know why they like eating reptiles.
Oh, well, they live in a dry, arid environment. And so it's not that they like eating everything, they must eat everything. It is not successful to be a picky eater if you live where they live out in Africa. And because they're partially immune to some of those venomous reptiles, that's a lot of good meat, and it helps protect the rest of the crew by eating those. They'll be safe and sane.
And we actually had a bunch of people ask about whether or not you could keep the animals we met today, especially the smaller ones, as pets. I don't know who wants to field that.
Yeah, believe it or not, meerkats are pets for some people in Africa. They make terrible pets. They are, of course, illegal as pets here in California. And I don't know if you guys saw those nails that were on them when we were watching the enrichment. They're pretty sharp nails, and they are considered cat-like carnivores. So they're a member of the carnivora order, and they have some pretty sharp teeth.
Let's see. We had a few folks ask about how big the meerkats were, why they're so small, and how big they get.
Burrows, they need to be small so they can get into their burrows underneath the ground. If they were larger, they'd get stuck in those little burrows. And if they were too big, they'd have to be like the aardvark, all out in the open. So they're anywhere between about maybe 4 and 8 pounds. And they're pretty tiny, and it helps them survive.
Let me see. I'm just scanning through ones that I didn't think we covered. Yeah, we'll do one more. So, someone asked what the flamingo's predators would be.
The flamingo predators are actually anything from birds of prey to jaguars, even raccoons and margays too.
All right. Well, I know we probably missed a few in there, but I think you gave us so much information. I know it's hard to remember everything we talked about. I know we have a few folks left on. I'm glad you were able to stick around for your questions to get answered. And of course, I'll tell you, if you have any questions about our amazing animals at the zoo, come on by the zoo and you can learn all about them. Or you can email me and I'll ask one of them. So thanks
you,
everyone
Liz.
for joining. Mary, I don't know if we have any other final business to wrap up, but I
don't think so. I can go ahead and end the meeting, and I'm just going to have everybody wave goodbye. Thank you so much.
Thank you.